My name is Emily Wanja. I am an impact producer. I've worked on a film called Thank You for the Rain, which is a feature documentary, a co-production between UK, Kenya, and Norway. UK because that's where the producer Hugh Hartford comes from. Norway because that's where the amazing Julia Dar, the director, comes from too. And Kenya because that's where the protagonist Kisilu Musia and also a co-director later in the film, where he comes from and where the film is based. Myself, I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya. The impact journey for Thank You for the Rain started pretty much in 2016 when myself and the film team participated at the Good Pitch Kenya. So Good Pitch at the time had been organized by DocuBox, which is a cultural organization in Nairobi, a film fund that supports storytellers across the East Africa region. And of course by Doc Society. And this is where I met the film team. I had never in my life heard about impact before that. And so when I was taking part in the Impact Lab, when Julia and Kisilu and Hugh talked about Thank You for the Rain, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I didn't know that film was happening in Kenya at the time. So it also happened that I was working on a youth show for agribusiness. So when BD talked about what impact is about, you know, how one forms allies and everything, I was like, oh, wait, I've been working with all these associations, with all these people across the country. I can help. I think I can introduce this film team to some of the contacts they might need. And so also by the end of Good Pitch, they were also looking for an impact producer. So they asked, so do you think this is something you would like to take on? And I said, yeah, you know, I could do it. And I thought that, you know, we're going to do it for 3 months, you know, and then we were all going to go back to our usual hassles. But then it turned out to be a beautiful journey of 3 years. And I'm going to tell you about that and how it kind of all happened. But we did not set out, you know, knowing that this is how long we were going to run. And so just in a nutshell, the campaign took different stages just to paint you a picture of the structure. We started after Good Pitch, where we met all these different partners who could help us in different levels of the conversation, because the film is about climate change, following the story of Kisilu Musia, who's a small-scale farmer based in rural Kenya. And so we met organizations that were working both on the grassroots level, others were working on the national level and the regional level. And later, we also met others who were working on the international landscape when we participated at Good Pitch Europe. And so we started by dividing the campaign into the first stage, which was the pilot stage. This meant that working with Kisilu, and in fact, under the leadership of Kisilu Musia, who is the protagonist of the film, we went back to where the film was made, which is where he comes from in Kitui. And so we were at the time screening the trailer, which is just 3 minutes. And we were asking the community representatives, there would be few, like, you know, say between 20 to 25 community representatives. And we would screen the film and we would ask, okay, the trailer, and we would ask, what do you think? You know, you've been seeing Kisilu here and the film crew, this is what they have been doing. The full film will be coming soon, but we wanted to get an idea of what you're thinking about this. They would give feedback. And they actually, during those screenings with the community, during the pilot phase, they did share some of the things they would want the film to do. So we promised to go back, you know, when we had the full film. And so that launched us into our first phase. So with the full film now, later, when it was released in 2017, after it premiered at CPH Docs, we now finally, the film was doing its festival run. It was doing its, it had its own like formal distribution. We were also at the same time running the impact campaign, the first phase. And so we went back again to Kisilu's community, to the same guys we had met before, and we were screening the full film now. So this is where we finally sat down with the community members, mainly community representatives, and came up with a list of, they basically listed some of the challenges and the priorities that they were going through as a result of climate change. And out of that, we filtered down. We said, okay, we can't do everything, but what would we prioritize? So this is where they shared things like, we need information to climate smart information. We need to figure out how we can harvest water when it rains. We need to meet our local leadership and figure out how we can co-curate solutions together. We want to be involved in the conversation on resources allocation to our communities, and especially to the area where Kisilu comes from. And so basically working with the community and later coming back to consult with some of the organizations that we had met throughout the journey of the Good Pitch and the pilot phase, we then came up with 4 components that would define the impact campaign. So there would be, well, the first component would deal with the community level engagement and advocacy. Then the second level would deal with the national and regional advocacy and impact. And the third phase would deal with the international advocacy, because all these different challenges that the communities were going through, they cut across all these different levels and stakeholders and policymakers and civil society organizations and NGOs that straddle these different levels. So we thought, okay, because of the beautiful medium that the film is and how powerful it is, it can very easily, you know, cut across these different sort of tiers, so to speak. And so everything that we ended up doing in the campaign would either touch one of these 4 different levels. Yeah. Kisilu Musia, the protagonist of the film and who's also the co-author of the film, had already been doing climate work. He was already involved with groups in his area. They were already planting trees, attending workshops and seminars on how to adapt to climate change and what practices they needed to apply in their farms. So already I would say he was an activist, but the film campaign scaled that work, because with the film now, he could go outside just his local area, immediate location, to other areas through the screenings. What happened is that for the national and regional level component of the film, we would screen in high schools and in primary schools too. We would also partner with different local organizations and NGOs in different parts of the country, the other counties that have the same climatic conditions, such as Kisilu. And so in that way, he was able to go to attend most of these screenings, share his own story firsthand, talk about what they were doing with his community, and also commune with other communities who are also doing and employing other methods of adaptation in their areas too. And then on the international level, of course, it was more than important for Kisilu to attend all the different screenings of the film in high-level climate talks, for instance, like COP23 in Bonn, Germany, EAT Forum, TED Global, for instance. And this was obviously very deliberate, because we felt communities are not represented in this kind of forums, right? The communities that are very at the very front line of climate. And so Kisilu being there was bringing agency, and he was representing so many other farmers like himself. So the campaign scaled his advocacy work and activities and participation to all these different other level and areas too. The thing about Kisilu himself is so inspiring as a human being, you know, as a father, even when you see him interacting with his family, and as a community leader. He commands that respect, and people listen to him, right? Because of his conviction, because he cares and he's so passionate about this work that he does. So the film and the campaign has transformed his life, in the sense that it has much more backing of the community than before. He has the ear of the local leadership. They're able to listen to him now, and much more easily. He has much more access. He has obviously much more information now that he's able to share with the community members. Some of the work that we did with the first component, which is the local level engagement and advocacy, includes the construction of an earth dam and a resource center. And so Kisilu and the community having this place where they can gather, where they can get together and just brainstorm or talk about some of the things that they want to do, collaborate has been really, really important in his work. So he has a place now where he can operate from, where he's easily reachable. And that pretty much has developed into the group and the community transforming from a community-based organization to a cooperative. It means now that they can access finances much more easily because they're much more organized. They can be reached by NGOs or any other organizations that are doing work in their area. So I think it has more or less like grounded him and kind of formalized his role as a community organizer. So that has transformed his life. I wish we could speak to him because he could just like share so beautifully, just, on his own. But yeah, as of now, we pretty much just have a few loose ends to tie on the campaign. And I'll say that because this is partly because of COVID, because when the pandemic started, obviously, like a lot of other people, we pivoted, we had to push a few other things much later. And then it so happened that this is the year that we are having the Africa COP later. So as we were thinking about pivoting, we thought, wait, there's a few activities that could align with COP. So we decided, let's push them to this year when COP is happening. And so this, whatever is pending right now, ties into a fourth component, which is sustainability. And this is not something that we always had. This is something that we thought about when we were trying to pivot as a result of the pandemic. And we realized we actually, this whole time, for the 2 years the campaign had been running, we did not actually have an exit plan. And so when we were thinking about how do we pivot, we decided we're going to call this component sustainability, because then it gives us an opportunity to wrap up all the different components, all the work that we had been doing in a much more stronger way, and live it in a way that it can carry on even without us. Because now the community, we have always been learning from them. All we've ever been doing really is just kind of supporting their work, helping them scale. So they don't really need us, frankly, to carry on. But we just needed to make sure that the structures and the frameworks that would strengthen that work would be in place. So this component is what we've been wrapping up, and we've had really good support with our funders who always asked us, what do you need? What is a challenge you're going through right now, and how can we help you overcome or achieve the results that you set out to do with your impact goals? So where we've pretty much with the community, Kisulu's community, they have the cooperative, which is good to carry on with the work. They have a full business plan. So it's just a question of prioritizing, what are the things I want to give more attention to. In the advocacy level, the national regional, we have the Climate Story Lab, which is how the Climate Story Lab convening, it came up as part of our impact campaign, because we felt all these networks that we made in the conversation of climate justice in this region, we needed to carry on with that work. So climate change gave us an amazing platform and a powerful platform to be able to do that. So that's why we're having the Climate Story Lab, the second edition, this year in September, just a month before COP. So this is pretty much where we are, with work happening on the ground where Kisilu comes from, and the advocacy level and impact, working with other stakeholders in the climate space in the region. So our campaign lasted officially for 3 years. But this 4th year, we are wrapping up a few loose ends. We're not as involved as we had been in the last 3 years. And myself, as an impact producer, I've been involved throughout. And I think it's worth mentioning that our campaign was running concurrently. We were running a campaign in East Africa, mainly in Kenya, but also Norway. And so the impact producer in Norway, Johan, also has been involved, although like 80% of the work really happened in East Africa. The reason we crafted or designed the impact campaign to include all these different partnerships, and especially the community, is because of how the film itself had been produced and had been made. The spirit of collaboration and co-authorship was right there in the way Julia and Kisilu had been working already throughout the 5 years of making the film, together with Hugh, how they had also been working with the community members because Kisilu is a community leader. And so by the time I was coming on board as an impact producer, it was very clear to me about that whole spirit of collaboration and co-authorship and working with Kisilu. And so for the impact practice, and even after we went through the lab, it only made sense that those partnerships would carry on and would continue working with the Kisilu's community. That's one. Number two is, the truth is, some of the work we ended up doing, the activities for the impact campaign, we had no idea as filmmakers. We did not have the expertise, we did not have the information, and we definitely needed help from other stakeholders who work in the climate space. Things like construction of an earth dam, things like information on climate smart farming, honestly, and even things on policy and advocacy on the national level and how that ties in with the international SDGs, for example, and goals. We vaguely knew about it, but we didn't have in-depth information. And so it was so important for us to work with all these different stakeholders who are already in those spaces. I think it's what they say, you never really need to reinvent the wheel. There's people who've been doing this work, and they've been in the movement for much longer than us as filmmakers by the time we come into a subject. And so that kind of magical collaboration just adds on to the work and just makes a stronger campaign. This question of funding, when we started, we did not have the whole all the funding in place. And in fact, we did not have the whole plan in place. I would say we just used to have like one phase, and then we'd complete that phase, then we would carry on to the next phase. For the pilot, for instance, we started out with $5,000. And then later on, we got another, say, $10,000 from some of the partners we met at Good Pitch, Kenya. And every phase and the work that we did there helped us build a stronger case for the next phase. And the next phase helped us build a stronger case for the next thing that we wanted to do. So all this earlier work that we had been doing helped us now put together a much bigger proposal, so to speak, or heavier proposal that we pitched to a Climate Justice Resilience Fund. And with the support of Climate Justice Resilience Fund, we were able to carry on for another 2 years. So in total, so to speak, 3 years. So it wasn't all planned out from the beginning. It was just step by step. And even when we were the Climate Justice Resilience Fund, for the very last component, the sustainability component, that was additional funding that we got after the pandemic to help us pivot. So we also did not have it from the beginning. And that's kind of the way the campaign and the funding structure rolled out step by step. The way we view, and I also just view this issue of funding and support, the way I look at collaborations is that, and this kind of support is that every support is so important, even when it doesn't equate to money. And so there's a lot of support that we got. Some of it was, of course, money-wise, and some of it could have translated into money if it was commoditized, or if it was monetized, that broken down that way, And so some of the screenings, for instance, well, it probably would have been easier to say, give us $5,000 or so. Instead, they were like, we're going to provide you with all this other in-kind support, and so you don't have to spend any money per se. And so I think for us and myself from the beginning, the way we looked at this kind of collaborations, it was always every support is so important, even when it doesn't equate to money, because you can always break it down, into money if you want to. And so in that sense, maybe it's because we already had the support to do the screenings, but I feel like if we were looking to make money from the screenings, maybe we would have tailored our campaign very differently from the onset. And maybe we would have made some, but maybe not as much as, maybe it wouldn't have been as smooth as when you already have the screenings taken care of, So updating and the relationship with the partners throughout the journey of the campaign is a beautiful thing. It's a lot of work, but it's beautiful because they are friends. You know, at some point you really become friends and they become your champions. They become people who you talk to when you're not sure about things. You talk to when you're afraid or anxious. When COVID hit, I remember the first people who went back to were the community. And we said, in a situation like this, what do we do? What would be the best way to pivot? Like, how should we carry on? You know? And so some partners are involved in different stages. Some were there at the very beginning, and then at some point, you know, they kind of dropped off, and others moved on, or their priorities and programmatic areas changed. And then in the process, you get new ones. Some we've been with them throughout. And so we keep them updated through reports, through just phone calls to say, this is what we're doing in this area. You mentioned you have an ally or you have a friend here, you know, how do we do this? So it's a mix of formal and kind of informal per se. Every time we do reports, we make sure we share with them. When we are posting stuff on social media, we tag them. You know, we just keep them just updated. If we have a screening or an exciting meeting, we tell them about our wins too. You know, they might not be wins to them, but hey, at least they understand where we're coming from. Yeah. I would say that for me, gratitude is already in the relationship that you cultivate. I don't see it as a one-off thing that I'm going to come and show you. It's in the way we relate to one another throughout the journey. It's the respect, it's the honesty and the transparency with which we share our experiences. And it's just recognizing them through the crediting them. Every time you get to speak about the work, you talk about these people who have come through for you throughout this time, and just making them feel that they're part of the journey throughout. That's what I would say, unless unless they say specifically, you know, there's something extra, there's a way they like to be credited, or they have different expectations. But for us, we just try to keep it open and hope that if there's anything else they expect, then it's a conversation that we can have. I would say as the sustainability model just depends on your campaign and your goals, what you're getting out to achieve. Then you can decide, you know, how long do you want to keep doing it, or not. Myself, I did not know, we did not know about any sustainability, you know, plan, or that we could have one. We did not have like a model, so to speak. It's something that kind of came organically as the campaign was running, and just after speaking with our partners, and just it was like the next logical step in the work that we are doing. So I don't know, I feel like now it's happening more and more, and maybe if we actually looked, we would have found. But I don't think when we started out, we thought that sustainability was a thing. You know, and also we didn't know that we're going to be in it for this long, you know. Maybe what I could just share is some of the lessons learned, just off the top of my head, what I can think about, is that it's always a learning process. I've been a student of this campaign right from the beginning till today. And so for me, and I think for all of us as a team, we realized from very early on that the importance of listening, and especially when working with the community members, it's so important to listen, because of our understanding of the issue and because of our perspectives in general. And I like giving this example about how it's easy to go to a people or a community, and then you look around, and from your observations and even probably what you've read from research papers and everything, you probably think, these guys, what they need, I need to provide them with, all of them, with a pair of shoes, because I've noticed maybe most of them are not walking around in shoes. And then if you actually sit down and really ask them and talk to them, they'll tell you, we don't have shoes because they're not a priority to us. If we really wanted shoes, we probably would get them. And so you realize other things are a priority. And that's just a lesson in just really being able to listen and respecting and honoring what they're bringing on the table. more than listening is also being cognizant of the solutions that they themselves have. And so there's nothing new. For instance, for us, we took to the community, for example, we just worked with what they had. It was just a question of, helping to scale it, just because we had a bit of resources, which we managed to find together. I think the other thing that we've learned is just the importance of co-authorship, collaboration, and working together truthfully. Because when you're honest and you recognize that I don't know everything, and my weaknesses are somebody else's strength. And so that kind of match and being open to that kind of contribution brings a genuine collaboration. And you realize you don't have to figure it all out. There's people who are so happy to share their experience, to connect you to other networks and other people who do the work or the answers that you're seeking. And that's, I think, the magic of this work and the impact work that we do. It's just the places that it's going to take you. So then it's being open and agile. Just be ready to adapt and just flow. Because if your intention is true, you will attract like-minded people. And I think for me, that's just the power and just what's so beautiful about this whole journey, the places that it's taken us as a film team. It's pushed us out of our comfort zones and the things that we are familiar with and we're used to, but we formed a community that is so beautiful and that love films, that love artists, they love working with creatives that may not understand it, but they're like, all right, okay, let's do this. What are you talking about? And we are like, what are you talking about? From a simple thing as just writing a proposal, like just asking someone, okay, is this language, is it too film centric? Does it make sense in your world? And they're like, this is probably how you want to frame it, So I think that's what's just been so beautiful, just about everything. And nothing is set in stone. Things change all the time. Pandemic happens, people priorities change, people move on, people change location, and so, but with a community, it's easier to figure it out, yeah. When we set out, our main goal was to just help and contribute towards resilience, creating resilience and adaptation for our communities. And so everything else we were doing would stem up from this intention. However, it ended up looking, and so then we came up with the goal of the community level engagement and advocacy, the national and regional level impact and advocacy, the international level advocacy, and later on sustainability. So all these different components, they tie in towards creating and working towards having communities that are much more resilient, that can adapt to climate change, that have agency to advocate for the things that they believe in, and to having a voice on the table. I stayed on the campaign the whole time, and luckily also with most of the team that was involved. And that was possible because there are times that are very busy, and then there are times that you can take a bit of a breather, right? So it was possible to kind of space it out that way. But in terms of saying it's over, so we have a few things that we have to do this year. And then pretty much, in terms of like officially reporting wise and all of that will be done. But I'm still going to be in communication. I'm still in communication with Kisilu's community. And so what we ended up doing is that what we're working towards right now is having an advisory committee of the willing. Out of all our partners, we have shared this intention that we just want to have an advisory committee, meaning that Kisilu's community especially will not feel like, oh, we all left and they're on their own now, which, and they're very well capable. They really honestly don't need us. But it's just to say that if in case you need to talk to somebody, in case you need a particular introduction, or if we can help in any way, know that you can call us, and that we have organized ourselves in some kind of way that is ready to help, So that's how I see it. So yes, I'll still be involved because we've had relationships, we have friendships now, we have things that we care about together. And I need to be, and I want to be available and accessible when needed. This question of accountability, who are you accountable to? Who are we accountable to? And for us, from the beginning, I think we felt and we knew that we were accountable to the community. And we knew that what we had was a powerful tool in form of a story, this documentary, and that its power was going to be used to get resources that would go to transform the lives somehow and to advocate for better lives and agency for the community members. And so that's who we are accountable to. And so when we think about the issue of climate justice, because that has been our angle all along, which is where those who have done the least to contribute to emissions, global emissions, are suffering the most, are the ones who do not have agency, are the ones who lately are seen but really not heard, and whose solutions are not really incorporated into the global agenda. And because of the nature of the campaign and the medium that we're using of a film, its ability to open those kind of doors, the theme of climate justice has been very close to us, and hence always thinking, elevating, giving agency to community voices wherever they might be, and seeing ourselves merely as facilitators of that process, but just making sure that they have a place on the table and that they are being involved in co-curating solutions that matter to our people. We've had, some gaps between one funding to the next, but it was a gap where we needed to develop paperwork, a proposal, to re-strategize, to quickly figure out, what we need to do. So I think in a sense, we have been lucky in the sense that it wasn't too long for us to lose sight or the momentum, but it was just good enough for us to re-strategize, repackage, and keep, putting out more proposals. So we have been lucky, I think, in that sense. When we started, my time was not being fully, compensated. And it helped because I had other work that I was doing, as a producer. And also it wasn't as intensive as it got at some point, right? So I could somehow create a balance. But if I was solely depending on this project as a full-time, impact producer practitioner, I probably wouldn't have made it because there wasn't enough compensation, especially when we started. And so for an impact campaign that's going to, number one, look for funds that will support the impact producers' work at the beginning is very important, because then it's not possible. It's just not possible. And that question becomes quite heavy at some point, because you end up putting more and more work. And I think on the part of the impact producer, I think that's why we say, pick a project that you believe in, pick a topic that you are passionate about. You have to really love the team, the project, and the issue, passionate about it, because that's the fuel that will keep you going and help you keep seeing opportunities and being creative as well in your fundraising process. So yes, if I was to do this in the future, I would say yes, let's first of all find some funds to support the impact team that's coming on board, because then they're able to, carry on with momentum.